January 28, 1457. A stone chamber in Wales. The screams echo through corridors that have seen centuries of death. But never anything like this. She's 13 years old. Her body tears. Bones shift and crack under pressure they were never meant to bear. The midwives exchange glances, they've seen this before. Girls this young don't survive. Blood soaks through the linens. Her screams turn to whispers. The child growing inside her doesn't care that her hips haven't finished forming. Doesn't care that she's barely lived. Hours pass. Then more hours. The candles burn low. And then a cry. Not hers. A baby's. A son. She's alive. Barely. Her body will never recover. She'll never have another child. 13, she's already broken. But that baby in her arms? He'll become Henry VII, King of England, founder of the Tudor Dynasty. And she, this shattered child, will become the most dangerous woman in the kingdom. How does a girl who nearly died giving birth at 13 become the woman who topples kings? Who orchestrates invasions? Who puts her own son on the throne of England through blood and conspiracy? The answer is written in bodies. In disappeared princes. In a battlefield where a crown was ripped from a dead king's head. This is the story they don't tell you about Margaret Beaufort. Welcome to Throne of Lies. May 31st, 1443. Bletsoe Castle, Bedfordshire. A baby girl enters a world at war with itself. England is eating itself alive. Two royal houses, Lancaster and York. Both claim the throne. Both believe God chose them. Both are willing to drown the country in blood to prove it. The baby's name is Margaret Beaufort. Her father, John Beaufort, Duke of Somerset, should be celebrating. Instead, he's staring at maps, at troop movements, at the impossible mathematics of a war he's losing. Margaret will never know him. 18 months later, he's dead. The official record says illness. Natural causes. But timing in medieval England is never natural. John Beaufort dies right after a catastrophic military failure in France. Dies owing the crown massive debts. Dies conveniently, some whisper, for those who wanted his lands. Margaret inherits everything. Castles. Estates. Wealth that would make kingdoms jealous. She's 1 year old. Here's what no one tells you about the Beaufort name. It's soaked in scandal. Margaret's great-great-grandfather was John of Gaunt, son of King Edward III. Royal blood. But her great-great-grandmother? Catherine Swynford. His mistress. They had 4 children together before marriage. Bastards, all of them. Years later, those children were legitimized. Made legal. Given the name Beaufort. But there was a catch. A single line added to the law. They could inherit wealth, titles, land, everything except the throne. That one line. That restriction. It would haunt Margaret Beaufort for her entire life. Because she knew, everyone knew, that without that line she had royal blood. Real. Undeniable. And now, at 1 year old, she's one of the richest heiresses in England. She doesn't know it yet, but she's not a child anymore. She's a transaction. The king's advisors are already drawing up contracts. Already negotiating. Margaret Beaufort, age 1, is officially betrothed to John de la Pole. She's signed away before she can speak. Welcome to medieval England, where baby girls with fortunes don't have childhoods. They have owners. The betrothal to John de la Pole doesn't last. Deals change. Alliances shift. By age 7, Margaret is promised to someone else. But the marriage that matters, the one that destroys her, doesn't happen until 1455. She's 12 years old. His name is Edmund Tudor. He's 28. Let that sit for a moment. 12. 28. Edmund Tudor is the half-brother of King Henry VI. Welsh nobility. Lancastrian loyalist. And he sees exactly what Margaret is. A fortune. A connection to the throne. A womb that can carry his heir. The marriage is arranged by the king himself. Margaret has no say. Her body is signed over in a contract she doesn't fully understand. 12 years old. She should be learning, playing, living. Instead, she's in a bed with a man more than twice her age. History calls this a marriage. Let's be clear what it actually was. Edmund doesn't waste time. Within months, Margaret is pregnant. Her body, still growing, still forming, is now carrying a child. And then Edmund makes a mistake. It's August 1456. The Wars of the Roses are escalating. Edmund, ever the loyalist, rides out to secure Lancastrian holdings in Wales. He's capturing castles, collecting taxes, enforcing the king's will. But Wales in 1456 is a death trap. Plague sweeps through the region like fire, and Edmund Tudor, for all his ambition, can't negotiate with disease. He dies. November 1st, 1456. Margaret is 13, widowed, pregnant, alone. She's carrying Edmund's child, his only chance at an heir. But her body is screaming that it's not ready. Hips too narrow, frame too small. The baby doesn't care, and neither does history. Pembroke Castle, Wales. January 28, 1457. Margaret Beaufort has been in labor for hours. She's 13 years old, and her body is failing. Medieval medical knowledge is brutally limited. The midwives do what they can. Prayers, herbs, pressure. But there's no way to widen hips that haven't finished growing. No way to stop bones from cracking under strain they were never meant to bear. She screams until her voice gives out. The baby is stuck. Margaret is hemorrhaging. The midwives exchange looks, the kind you exchange when you know someone isn't going to make it. But somehow, impossibly, the baby comes. A boy, alive, screaming. They name him Henry. Margaret collapses. She's bleeding, feverish, barely conscious. For days they think she'll die. Her body has been torn apart from the inside. She survives. But the damage is catastrophic. Her physicians tell her what she already knows. She'll never have another child. 13, her body is ruined. One pregnancy, one birth. That's all she gets. History books gloss over this part. They mention she had a difficult birth. They move on to her son's achievements. But stay here for a moment. 13 years old. No mother to guide her. Husband dead. Body shattered. And an infant son who represents the last piece of Edmund Tudor's ambition. Margaret Beaufort lies in that chamber, recovering from a birth that should have killed her, and something changes. She has one child. One. That's all she'll ever have. And she makes a decision that will drown England in blood. That child will be king, no matter what it costs. If this story is shocking you, imagine what else history has buried. We're exposing these brutal truths, but we need your help to reach more people. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. Don't let another person scroll past without knowing the truth. February 1457. Pembroke Castle. Margaret Beaufort is 13 years old. Her husband is dead. Her body is broken, and she's holding an infant who just made her the most vulnerable person in England. Because that baby Henry has Lancastrian blood. Tudor blood. Beaufort blood. 3 different lines that all lead back to the throne. And in 1457, having royal blood while the wrong family holds power is a death sentence. King Henry VI, Margaret's kinsman, is losing his mind. Literally. He suffers from periods of complete catatonia, staring at walls, unable to speak, unable to rule. The Duke of York sees an opportunity, takes control as protector of the realm. Civil war erupts. Margaret watches from Wales, holding her infant son, and she understands something fundamental. She cannot protect him alone. She's 13, widowed, no military power, no political leverage beyond her name and her wealth, both of which make her a target. Edmund's brother, Jasper Tudor, arrives at Pembroke. He's a soldier, a Lancastrian loyalist, and he sees what Margaret sees. This baby is in danger. But Jasper can't marry her, can't legitimize his protection. Margaret needs a husband, not for love, not even for protection, for camouflage. Enter Henry Stafford, younger son of the Duke of Buckingham. Moderate politics, no strong Yorkist or Lancastrian ties. Safe. The marriage happens quickly. Margaret is 14 now. Stafford is kind. By medieval standards, that means he doesn't beat her. It's enough. But there's a problem. The war is getting worse. 1461. everything changes. The Lancastrians lose the Battle of Toten, the bloodiest battle ever fought on English soil. 28,000 men dead in a single day. The snow runs red. King Henry VI flees to Scotland. And Edward of York, 29 years old, 6'4", a warrior who killed his first man at 17, marches into London and crowns himself king. Edward IV. Jasper Tudor grabs baby Henry and runs. They flee into Wales, hunted by Yorkist soldiers. Margaret stays behind with Stafford. She has to. Running would confirm her guilt, confirm her son is a threat. So she watches them disappear into the mountains. Henry is 4 years old. She doesn't know when, or if, she'll see him again. Edward IV is king now, and he's not interested in mercy. Lancastrians are hunted, executed, their lands seized, their families destroyed. Margaret Beaufort keeps her head down, plays the obedient noblewoman, attends court when required, smiles at the right moments. Her husband, Henry Stafford, bends the knee to Edward, swears loyalty, keeps them alive. But Margaret's son, her only child, is in constant danger. For years, Jasper Tudor moves Henry from castle to castle in Wales, hiding, running, training the boy in combat, in survival, in the brutal reality of being Lancastrian royalty under a Yorkist king. Then, in 1470, everything flips again. Warwick the Kingmaker, Edward's former ally, switches sides. Invades England with a Lancastrian army. Edward IV flees to Europe. Henry VI is pulled from the Tower of London and put back on the throne. For 6 months, the Lancasters are back. Margaret sees her son for the first time in years. Henry is 13 now, nearly the age she was when she gave birth to him. They have 6 months together. That's all. Edward IV returns with an army, smashes Warwick at the Battle of Barnet, then annihilates the remaining Lancastrian forces at Tewkesbury. Henry VI dies in the Tower. The official story says natural causes. No one believes it. His son, the Lancastrian heir, is butchered after the battle, pulled from sanctuary and cut down. The Lancastrian line is dead, except for Margaret's son. Jasper sees what's coming. He grabs 14-year-old Henry Tudor and they run. This time they don't stop. A ship, the Channel, Brittany, exile. Margaret stands in England and watches her only child disappear across the water. He's 14. She's 28. She's now spent more years without him than with him. And Henry Stafford is dying. Illness takes him slowly through 1471. By October, he's dead. Margaret is a widow again. 30 years old. No children except the one she can't reach. She needs protection. Real protection. The kind that can survive regime changes and royal purges. Enter Thomas Stanley. Lord Stanley. One of the richest, most powerful nobles in England. He's also the most slippery. Stanley has survived every regime change by picking the winning side at the last possible moment. He's pledged loyalty to Lancaster, then York, then Lancaster again, then York again. He's never been on the wrong side of a battle because he doesn't commit until he knows who's going to win. Edward IV trusts him because Stanley bends the knee. But Stanley doesn't trust anyone, including Edward. Margaret marries him in 1472. It's her third marriage. She's 30. He's considerably older. This isn't about love. This is about survival. But it comes with a cost. Stanley's power means Margaret is watched. Constantly. Every letter. Every conversation. Every move. Because Edward IV might tolerate Stanley's wife. But he'll never forget whose son is across the channel in Brittany. Margaret Beaufort is trapped. Married to a man who's loyal to her enemy. Separated from her son. And every day, she wakes up knowing that Henry is alive in exile. One son. One chance. 14 years they'll be apart. 14 years of watching. Waiting. Planning. 14 years. That's how long Margaret Beaufort is separated from her son. Henry is in Brittany, living on the charity of Duke Francis. Learning French. Training with soldiers. Growing from a boy into a man that Margaret will barely recognize. And Margaret is in England, playing the role of Thomas Stanley's obedient wife. But something is happening to her. The years of separation twist into obsession. She writes letters, coded, careful, smuggled across the channel through trusted merchants. Messages that take weeks to arrive. She prays, hours every day, matins at dawn, vespers at dusk, private prayers in between. Her confessors note that she's devoted, exceptionally so. But there's something else in those prayers. Something that goes beyond devotion. Margaret begins having visions, dreams where God speaks to her, tells her that her son is chosen, destined. She takes a vow of chastity, while still married to Stanley. He agrees to it. They live as political partners, not husband and wife. Everything in Margaret's life becomes singular, focused. Her son will be king. Not maybe, not possibly, will be. She donates to churches, funds religious institutions, builds her reputation as a pious, unthreatening noblewoman who spends her time on prayer and charity. No one suspects, but in private she's building networks, cultivating relationships, identifying nobles who are tired of Edward IV, who remember the old Lancastrian days. 1483 arrives. Edward IV dies suddenly. April 9th. He's only 40 years old. His son, Edward V, is 12. Too young to rule alone. The boy's uncle, Richard of Gloucester, is named Lord Protector, and Margaret Beaufort watches, because she knows something about uncles who become protectors. They don't stay protectors for long. June 1483. The Tower of London. Edward V, the boy king, is there. His younger brother Richard, Duke of York, joins him. Two princes, 12 and 9 years old. Their uncle, Richard of Gloucester, tells everyone they're being kept safe, protected while arrangements are made for Edward's coronation. The coronation never happens. Instead, Richard of Gloucester declares both boys illegitimate, claims their father was secretly married to someone else before marrying their mother. The boys' claim to the throne? Invalid. And Richard of Gloucester? He crowns himself king. Richard III. The princes stay in the tower. At first, people see them playing in the grounds, shooting arrows, being children. Then, slowly, the sightings stop. By autumn, no one sees them at all. Rumors start immediately, whispered in taverns, in markets, in the halls of nobles who dare not speak too loudly. The princes are dead, murdered, smothered in their sleep. No bodies are found. No official announcement is made. But everyone knows. Margaret Beaufort knows. And she sees exactly what this means. Richard III has just made himself the most hated man in England. Killed children, his own nephews, to steal a crown. The Yorkist cause is fractured. Nobles who supported Edward IV are horrified, disgusted. For the first time in 14 years, Margaret sees an opening. She reaches out to Elizabeth Woodville, Edward IV's widow, the mother of the disappeared princes. These two women should be enemies. Woodville is Yorkist royalty. Margaret is Lancastrian to her bones. But they both hate Richard III more than they hate each other. They make a deal. Margaret's son, Henry Tudor, will invade England, will take the throne from Richard. And when he does, he'll marry Elizabeth Woodville's daughter, Elizabeth of York, uniting the houses, ending the war. But first they have to get him here. And that means money, soldiers, ships. It means conspiracy. Margaret Beaufort, the pious widow who spends her days in prayer, is about to orchestrate a rebellion. This is just the beginning of Margaret's ruthless climb to power. But channels like ours get buried by the algorithm every day. If you want to see how this mother's obsession changed England forever, subscribe now. We need 1,000 subscribers to keep bringing you these untold stories. Don't let the truth die here. September 1483. London. Margaret Beaufort is sitting in her chambers, embroidering, praying, playing the perfect noblewoman, and funding a rebellion. Henry Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, has decided Richard III needs to go. Buckingham helped put Richard on the throne, stood beside him, supported the claim that the princes were illegitimate. Now he regrets it. Maybe it's guilt over the disappeared princes. Maybe it's ambition. Buckingham has royal blood too, distant but real. Maybe he's just disgusted. Whatever the reason, Buckingham is raising an army. And Margaret is paying for it. Gold moves quietly through her networks. Trusted servants. Loyal retainers. Money appears in Buckingham's coffers with no clear source. Meanwhile, Margaret's physician, a man named Louis, becomes very busy. He's traveling. A lot. Official story. Medical consultations. House calls for wealthy patients. Reality. He's a messenger. Louis carries letters across the channel to Brittany. Coded messages to Henry Tudor. Instructions. Plans. Promises of support when he lands. The conspiracy is simple. Buckingham raises rebellion in England. Creates chaos. Pulls Richard's forces west. Meanwhile, Henry Tudor sails from Brittany with whatever forces he can gather. Lands while Richard is distracted. Two-pronged attack. Coordinated timing. October 1483. Buckingham raises his standard in Wales. And then everything falls apart. Storms hit the Welsh coast. Torrential rain. Rivers overflow. Roads become impassable mud. Buckingham's army can't move. His soldiers, already nervous about rebelling against an anointed king, start deserting. Henry Tudor's ships sail from Brittany. Hit the same storms. Turn back. Richard III moves fast. His army reaches Buckingham before the rebellion really starts. Buckingham is captured. November 2nd, 1483. He's beheaded in Salisbury Marketplace. And Richard's investigators start following the money. They find Margaret. November 1483. Margaret Beaufort is arrested. Charged with conspiracy. Treason. The penalty for treason is death. But here's where Thomas Stanley finally shows his hand. He goes to Richard III. Bends the knee. Swears he had no knowledge of his wife's activities. Claims he's loyal. And he asks for mercy. Not freedom. Just her life. Richard looks at Stanley, one of the most powerful nobles in England, commander of thousands of troops, and he makes a calculation. Execute Margaret and Stanley might turn against him. Spare her, and he keeps Stanley's loyalty. He chooses Stanley. Margaret's lands are stripped away, her wealth confiscated. She's placed under house arrest, in Stanley's custody. Official records state that all her property now belongs to Thomas Stanley for the rest of her natural life. She's powerless, penniless, a prisoner in her own husband's house. But she's alive, and across the channel her son is still free. Richard III thinks he's won. Crushed the conspiracy. Made an example of Buckingham. Neutralized Margaret. He's wrong. Because Margaret Beaufort has spent 14 years separated from her son. Has survived 3 husbands, a civil war, and childbirth that should have killed her. House arrest isn't going to stop her. It's going to make her more careful. October 1483. The same storms that destroyed Buckingham's rebellion scatter Henry Tudor's ships. Henry makes it to the English coast. Plymouth. He can see the shore. But something is wrong. Men are waiting on the beach. Soldiers. They're waving, calling out, telling him to land, that they're Buckingham's forces. Henry stares at them from the deck. He's been in exile since he was 14. Survived assassination attempts. Learned to trust no one. Those aren't Buckingham's men. He orders the ships to turn around. Sail back to Brittany. He's right. They're Richard's soldiers. A trap. Henry Tudor escapes. Barely. Back in Brittany, he's furious. Humiliated. His one chance at invasion failed before it even started. But he's alive. And Margaret, locked in Stanley's house in England, starts rebuilding. She can't travel. Can't move freely. But she can whisper. Servants loyal to her carry messages. Nobles sympathetic to the Lancastrian cause receive quiet visits. And across the channel, Henry is preparing. 1484. Then 1485. 2 years of preparation. Henry needs money. Ships. Soldiers. He's a nobody in exile. No kingdom, no army, no real support. But the French king, Charles VIII, sees an opportunity. Richard III is allied with Burgundy, France's enemy. Put a different king on England's throne, and the alliance breaks. Charles offers Henry money, ships, even some French troops. It's not much, but it's enough. August 1st, 1485. Henry Tudor sails from France with approximately 2,000 men. Mostly French mercenaries, some English exiles, a handful of Welsh loyalists. Against him, Richard III commands the entire English military. The odds are suicide. August 7th. Henry's ships land at Mill Bay in Pembrokeshire, Wales, the same region where he was born, where his uncle Jasper kept him safe as a child. He steps onto English soil for the first time in 14 years, and he starts walking north, toward Richard, toward battle. As Henry marches, something extraordinary happens. Men join him, not thousands, not the massive army he needs, but enough. Welsh soldiers who remember Jasper Tudor, English nobles tired of Richard's rule, Lancastrian loyalists who've been waiting for this moment. Margaret's network activates. Messages spread through England. Secret supporters reveal themselves. Supply depots appear along Henry's route, food, weapons, fresh horses. Margaret can't leave Stanley's house, but her reach extends across the kingdom. By mid-August, Henry has maybe 5,000 men. Richard has 10,000. But there's a third army, the one that matters most. Thomas Stanley and his brother William. Together, they command about 6,000 troops, and no one knows whose side they're on. Richard doesn't trust Stanley. How could he? Stanley's wife funded a rebellion. So Richard does something brutal. He takes Stanley's son, Lord Strange, hostage. Brings him to camp, makes it clear. If Stanley betrays him, his son dies. Stanley tells Richard he's loyal. His troops will fight for the king. But Stanley's army doesn't move. They march near Richard's forces, close enough to join the battle. But they don't join. They wait. August 22nd, 1485. Both armies converge on a field near Market Bosworth in Leicestershire. Henry Tudor, with 5,000 men, faces Richard III with 10,000. And Thomas Stanley's 6,000 troops sit on a hill, watching. Everyone knows this battle will decide England's future. No one knows whose side Stanley will choose, including Stanley. August 22nd, 1485. Dawn. Bosworth Field. Richard III wears his crown into battle. Not because he's arrogant, though he is, but because he wants everyone to see who they're fighting for. The anointed king of England. Henry Tudor's forces form up. 5,000 men who know they're outnumbered, who know their only chance is Stanley. Richard's army spreads across the field. 10,000 strong. Professionals. Well-armed. Confident. And on a hill to the north, Thomas Stanley sits with 6,000 troops. Richard sends a message. Join me now, or your son dies. Stanley sends back a reply that becomes legend. Sire, I have other sons. But Stanley still doesn't move. The battle begins. Henry's forces are disciplined. These French mercenaries know what they're doing, but they're being pushed back. Slowly, inevitably, Richard sees it. Sees Henry near the rear of his army, surrounded by a small bodyguard. And Richard makes a decision that will end everything. He's going to kill Henry himself. Richard gathers his household knights, his best fighters, maybe 80 men in full armor, and he charges, straight across the field, directly at Henry Tudor. It's insane, glorious, suicidal. Richard III crashes into Henry's bodyguard like a hammer. His lance kills Henry's standard-bearer, William Brandon, instantly. He comes within feet of Henry himself. If Richard reaches Henry, the war is over. Cut down the pretender and his army collapses. But Richard is trapped, surrounded. His horse stumbles in marshy ground. And on the hill, Thomas Stanley finally moves. Stanley's brother William charges. Not toward Henry, toward Richard. 6,000 fresh troops slam into Richard's exposed flank. Richard's knights are butchered. He's unhorsed, surrounded. Someone, history never records who, takes a halberd and swings it into the back of Richard's skull. The crown he wore into battle goes flying. The King of England dies in the mud. His last words, according to witnesses, "Treason! Treason!" He's not wrong. The battle collapses. Richard's army scatters. It's over in hours. And Henry Tudor, the exile, the nobody, the son of a woman who nearly died giving birth to him at 13, stands on Bosworth Field. Someone finds Richard's crown. In a hawthorn bush of all places, Thomas Stanley picks it up and places it on Henry Tudor's head. Right there, on the battlefield, surrounded by corpses. Henry VII, King of England, Margaret Beaufort's son, her only child, the one she sacrificed everything for. He's king. October 30th, 1485, Westminster Abbey. Henry VII is crowned King of England in a formal ceremony. Margaret Beaufort stands in the abbey, watching her son receive the crown legally, officially, from the hands of God and the Church. She's 42 years old. She hasn't seen Henry in person for 14 years. Now he's king. And Margaret? She's about to become the most powerful woman in England. Henry wastes no time. His first parliament passes acts that legitimize his rule, declares him king by right of conquest, backdates his reign to the day before Bosworth, making everyone who fought for Richard a traitor. Convenient. He marries Elizabeth of York in January 1486, uniting the houses of Lancaster and York. Red rose and white rose together. The marriage is politically perfect. But Elizabeth of York is queen in name only, because the real power belongs to Margaret. Henry grants his mother unprecedented authority. She's given estates, income, control over royal appointments. She signs documents Margaret R for Regina, queen. Technically, she's not queen, but she acts like one, dresses like one, wields power like one. Her official title becomes My Lady the King's Mother. It's carved into stone, written into legal documents, spoken in court. Everyone knows what it means. Margaret Beaufort is untouchable. She controls access to Henry, advises him on policy, arranges marriages, distributes patronage. Elizabeth of York, the actual queen, is sidelined. She produces heirs, attends ceremonies, smiles. But when decisions are made, when power is exercised, that's Margaret. Henry listens to his mother in a way he listens to no one else, because she's the one who kept him alive, who plotted for 14 years, who risked everything. He owes her the throne, and she collects. Margaret's religious devotion intensifies. She founds colleges at Cambridge, Christ's College and St. John's College, funds religious institutions, translates devotional texts from French. She takes her vow of chastity seriously, still married to Thomas Stanley, but living separately, dedicating herself to God and power in equal measure. She regulates her household with military precision. Her daily schedule is documented. Prayers at specific hours, meals at specific times, audiences granted with careful deliberation. Nothing happens in her presence without her approval. And if you want something from King Henry VII, you go through his mother first. This arrangement lasts for 24 years. Henry VII's entire reign, Margaret is there, watching, guiding, controlling. She outlives Thomas Stanley, outlives Elizabeth of York, outlives most of the nobles who survived the Wars of the Roses. In 1509, Henry VII dies. He's 52, worn down by years of paranoid rule, of crushing rebellions, of eliminating anyone with a better claim to his throne. His son, Henry VIII, becomes king. Margaret's grandson. She attends his coronation, watches another Henry crowned at Westminster. June 29, 1509. 9 days after Henry VIII's coronation, Margaret Beaufort dies at Westminster Abbey. She's 66 years old. She's lived to see her son crowned, her grandson crowned, her dynasty secured. The Tudors will rule England for 118 years. All because a 13-year-old girl survived childbirth and decided her son would be king, no matter what it cost. Margaret Beaufort orchestrated one of history's greatest power plays, but you won't find this full story in most history books if you've made it this far. You clearly love this content. Subscribe and help us expose more royal lies that shaped our world. 1485. Henry VII sits on the throne of England, but his claim is weak, built on conquest, on a battlefield, on Stanley's last-minute betrayal. There are at least a dozen people with better bloodline claims to the crown. Margaret Beaufort knows this, and she makes sure her son never forgets it. Henry's reign becomes defined by one word: paranoia. Every noble with Yorkist blood is a threat. Every distant cousin. Every child born with the wrong ancestry. They have to go. 1487. Lambert Simnel, a boy claiming to be the Earl of Warwick, raises an army. He's probably just a puppet, a figurehead for Yorkist lords trying to reclaim power. Henry crushes the rebellion at Stoke Field. But here's the thing. The Real Earl of Warwick is locked in the Tower of London. Has been since Henry took the throne. He's 10 years old when Henry imprisons him. He's never committed a crime, never raised a hand against anyone. His crime is being the nephew of Edward IV, having a claim to the throne. The boy stays in the tower for 14 years. 1499. Another pretender emerges, Perkin Warbeck, claiming to be one of the disappeared princes. After his execution, Henry decides the real Warwick is too dangerous to keep alive. November 28, 1499. The Earl of Warwick is beheaded. He's 24 years old. He spent more than half his life in prison for being born. Margaret watches this happen, approves. But the executions don't stop. Edmund de la Pole, Earl of Suffolk, executed 1513 after Henry's death, but imprisoned on Henry's orders. His brother Richard de la Pole dies in exile. His younger brother William, imprisoned for 37 years, for nothing except his bloodline. Anyone with Yorkist blood learns to sleep lightly. But the physical eliminations are just part of Henry's strategy. He develops something else, something more insidious: bonds and recognizances. Here's how it works. Henry accuses nobles of minor infractions, sometimes real, often fabricated. Then he offers them a deal: pay an enormous bond, thousands of pounds, as guarantee of future good behavior. If they stay loyal, they get the money back. Except they never do. Henry finds reasons to claim they violated terms, keeps the money, demands more. Suddenly, the richest families in England are in debt to the crown. One wrong move, one perceived slight, and they're ruined. It's financial terrorism. By the end of Henry's reign, nearly half the English nobility is under bonds. Entire families bankrupted, living in fear. And Margaret? She's managing the accounts, reviewing the lists, deciding who pays, who's ruined, who's allowed to keep their wealth. Every Monday, she meets with Henry's council, sits at the table, votes on policy. She's not queen, but she governs like one. The Spanish ambassador writes to his king about Margaret, describes her as the one truly ruling England, says Henry makes no major decision without consulting her. Mother and son, united in paranoia, in ruthlessness. They build a system where loyalty is measured in gold and blood, where having the wrong ancestors is a death sentence, where even children aren't safe if they carry Yorkist blood. This is Henry VII's England. This is Margaret Beaufort's legacy. And she's convinced she's doing God's work. Margaret Beaufort prays for 4 hours, every day, matins at dawn, vespers at dusk, private devotions in between. Her confessors document her routine. She rises at 5 in the morning. Prayers. Massachusetts breakfast, brief, simple. More prayers. She wears a hair shirt under her expensive gowns. Fasts regularly. Gives generously to the church. By every visible measure, she's a saint. She founds Christ's College at Cambridge in 1505. Then St. John's College, though it's completed after her death. She translates religious texts from French to English, makes devotional literature accessible to those who can't read Latin. She endows chantries, chapels where priests pray for souls in purgatory, including her own. Margaret Beaufort is obsessed with her eternal soul, while destroying everyone who threatens her temporal power. The contradiction is staggering. She takes a vow of chastity in 1499. She's still married to Thomas Stanley, he's still alive. But they live separately. She dedicates herself to God. Claims she's renouncing earthly pleasures for spiritual purity. Meanwhile, she's orchestrating the execution of children. The Earl of Warwick, beheaded the same year she takes her vow. Yorkist children imprisoned. Families ruined. And Margaret prays. She genuinely believes she's righteous. That God chose her son. That every execution, every imprisonment, every act of political brutality is justified. Because in Margaret's mind, she's protecting God's anointed king. Henry VII isn't just her son. He's divinely ordained. His enemies are God's enemies. Therefore, destroying them is holy work. The cognitive dissonance is complete. She can order a 24-year-old man executed for the crime of being born, then spend 4 hours praying for mercy and forgiveness. She can bankrupt families through financial extortion, then donate thousands to build colleges and churches. She can live in luxury, expensive clothes, fine food, a household of hundreds, while wearing a hair shirt underneath. Medieval religion allows this, encourages it even. Donate enough, pray enough, fund enough religious institutions, and your sins are forgiven. Margaret takes this to its logical extreme. Her household regulations survive. Documents showing how she controlled every aspect of her environment. Servants must be silent in her presence unless spoken to. Meals at exact times. Visitors scheduled and approved days in advance. She signs letters and legal documents with Margaret R. Regina, Queen, even though she's not. But in her mind, in everyone's mind, really, she is. Thomas Stanley dies in 1504. Margaret doesn't remarry. Doesn't need to. She has more power as a widow than most queens have while married. For 24 years, she rules beside her son, praying, plotting, destroying, convinced until her last breath that she's doing God's will, that heaven awaits her, that the blood on her hands is justified, because her son is king. April 21st, 1509. Henry VII dies at Richmond Palace. He's 52 years old, worn down by years of paranoia, by constant threats, real and imagined, by a reign built on fear. His son becomes Henry VIII, Margaret's grandson. She's 66 years old now, frail, but still sharp. She arranges Henry VIII's coronation, oversees the ceremony, makes sure every detail is perfect. June 24th, 1509, Westminster Abbey. Margaret Beaufort watches her 17-year-old grandson crowned King of England. 2 Henrys she's placed on England's throne. The dynasty is secure. 5 days later, she falls ill. June 29th, 1509. Margaret Beaufort dies at Westminster Abbey. 9 days after her grandson's coronation. She dies surrounded by priests, her confessors, her household. She receives last rites. Confesses her sins, though what she actually confesses no one records. Her funeral is magnificent, befitting a queen even though she never was one. Bishop John Fisher preaches her eulogy, calls her a model of virtue, a piety, of devotion to God and family. He doesn't mention the executions, the financial extortion, the children imprisoned and killed. History, written by the victors, remembers Margaret Beaufort as a saint. But here's what she actually accomplished. She survived childbirth at 13 that should have killed her. She survived 3 husbands. She survived a civil war that destroyed her family. She orchestrated a rebellion. She financed an invasion. She put her son on the throne through blood and conspiracy. And then she ruled beside him for 24 years. The Tudor Dynasty, her dynasty, lasts 118 years. Henry VIII, Edward VI, Mary I, Elizabeth I, all Margaret's descendants, all ruling because a 13-year-old girl nearly died and decided her son would be king. The cost? Thousands dead in the Wars of the Roses, wars her actions prolonged. Children executed for their bloodline. Families bankrupted and destroyed. A kingdom ruled by fear and paranoia for a quarter century. Was it worth it? Margaret Beaufort would say yes, because her son was king. And isn't that all that matters? So who was Margaret Beaufort? Victim or villain? Saint or monster? The answer is yes. All of it. At once. She was 13 years old when a man twice her age got her pregnant. When her body broke, bringing his child into the world. When she became a widow and a mother in the same year. That's not ambition. That's survival. She was trapped. By her gender. By her bloodline. By a war that started before she was born and wouldn't end until long after she should have died. Every choice she made for the first 30 years of her life was about staying alive. About keeping her son alive. That's real. That's documented. That's trauma. But here's the uncomfortable part. Trauma doesn't excuse what came after. Margaret Beaufort didn't stop at survival. She didn't stop at protecting her son. She orchestrated invasions, financed rebellions, watched children executed because they had the wrong grandfather. She ruled through fear, through financial extortion, through systematic elimination of anyone who threatened her power. And she did it all while praying, while funding churches, while calling herself God's servant. The question we have to ask is this: when did survival become ambition? When did protecting her son become destroying everyone else's? Was it when Henry was exiled at 14? When she spent 14 years separated from him, obsessing over his return? Was it when she saw Richard III murder children to steal a throne, and decided her son could do better? Or was it always there? From the moment she nearly died at 13, did something break inside her that never healed? We'll never know. What we do know is this: Margaret Beaufort got what she wanted. Her son became king. Her grandson became king. Her dynasty ruled for over a century. England remembers the Tudors, Henry VIII, Elizabeth I. They don't remember the Earl of Warwick, imprisoned at 10 and executed at 24. They don't remember the families bankrupted and destroyed. They don't remember the bodies. History is written by the winners. And Margaret Beaufort won. But winning doesn't make you right. The Spanish ambassador called her the true ruler of England. Bishop Fisher called her a saint. Both were correct. Because Margaret Beaufort was capable of holding two truths at once: genuine religious devotion and political ruthlessness, maternal love and calculated murder, personal trauma and inflicted trauma. She was a child bride who survived the unsurvivable. And she was a woman who decided her suffering justified everyone else's. Both are true. History wants us to pick a side, to decide if she's hero or villain. But Margaret Beaufort doesn't fit in either box. She's the uncomfortable middle, the place where victimhood and violence intersect, where survival instincts become weapons, where a mother's love becomes a kingdom's nightmare. Was it worth it? Ask the Earl of Warwick. Ask the families destroyed by Henry's financial extortion. Ask the soldiers who died at Bosworth Field. Then ask Henry VII, who got to be king. Ask the Tudor Dynasty, which shaped England for over a century. The answer depends on whose grave you're standing on. And that's the truth about Margaret Beaufort. Not comfortable, not simple, not what the history books want to tell you, but true. Margaret Beaufort's story is one of survival, obsession, and ruthless ambition. History tried to paint her as a pious saint, but here on Throne of Lies, we show you the blood behind the crown. If you want more brutal truths about the royals who shaped our world, subscribe now. Every subscription helps us expose more lies that textbooks won't tell you. Hit that subscribe button. Ring the bell so you never miss an episode. And drop a comment telling us which monarch we should expose next. Because the truth is always more shocking than the legend. This is Throne of Lies, where we don't let crowns hide crimes. Until next time, keep questioning the throne.